is free and provides Wildfire maps and updates in real time. Keep your gas tank full and plan your route in case you have to leave the area. City and county officials are urging you to pack a go bag so you can be ready to leave your home quickly in case of an evacuation order. Your go bag should include a couple of days of clothing, copies of your important documents and ID, money, insurance information, your medications, electronic devices, batteries, chargers, a small radio, and emergency contacts. If you receive an evacuation order, gather your loved ones, grab your bag, your pet food, and leave immediately. For information on shelters for your pets or even your family, call 211 for the City of Los Angeles and 311 county-wide. Wearing a mask outside will help protect you from smoke, toxic fume, and particulate matter. If you don't need to go out, it's best to stay home with the windows closed. Getting to know your neighbors is a great way to stay safe, stay connected, and share resources. And Angelinos are stepping up to help, so reach out and find the assistance you need. Mutual Aid LA Network is constantly updating a Google Sheet with mutual aid resources. You can find it at tiny.cc-malan-fire. The earlier you make a plan, the better off you'll be when every second counts. Praying for LA, preparing, and standing with you. KBLA, Talk 1580.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and right now, President Biden is delivering a very rare Oval Office address. It is his farewell address to the nation. We're going to go straight to that. Take a listen.
That all of us deserve to be treated with dignity, justice, and fairness. That democracy must defend and be defined and be imposed, moved in every way possible. Our rights, our freedoms, our dreams. But we know the idea of America, our institution, our people, our values that uphold it are constantly being tested. Ongoing debates about power and the exercise of power, but whether we lead by the example of our power or the power of our example, whether we show the courage to stand up to the abuse of power or we yield to it. After 50 years at the center of all of this, I know that believing in the idea of America means respecting the institutions that govern a free society, the presidency, the Congress, the courts, a free and independent press, institutions that are rooted, they just might not reflect the timeless words, but they echo the words of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Rooted in the timeless words of the Constitution, we the people. Our system of separation of powers, checks and balances. It may not be perfect, but it's maintained our democracy for nearly 250 years, longer than any other nation in history that's ever tried such a bold experiment. In the past 4 years, our democracy has held strong. And every day I've kept my commitment to be president for all Americans through one of the toughest periods in our nation's history. I've had a great partner in Vice President Kamala Harris. It's been the honor of my life to see the resilience of essential workers getting us through a once-in-a-century pandemic, the heroism of service members and first responders keeping us safe, the determination of advocates standing up for our rights and our freedoms instead of losing their jobs to an economic crisis that we inherited. Millions of Americans now have the dignity of work. Millions of entrepreneurs and companies creating new businesses and industries, hiring American workers, using American products. Together, we've launched a new era of American possibilities. One of the greatest modernizations of infrastructure in our entire history, from new roads, bridges, clean water, affordable high-speed internet, for every American. We invented the semiconductor, smaller than the tip of my little finger, and now is bringing those chip factories and those jobs back to America where they belong, creating thousands of jobs. Finally, giving Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for millions of seniors. And finally, doing something to protect our children and our families by passing the most significant gun safety law in 30 years and bringing violent crime to a 50-year low, meeting our sacred obligation to over 1 million veterans so far who are exposed to toxic materials, and to their families, providing medical care and education benefits and more for their families. You know, it will take time to feel the full impact of all we've done together. But the seeds are planted, and they'll grow and they'll bloom for decades to come. At home, we've created nearly 17 million new jobs, more than any other single administration, a single term. More people have health care than ever before. And overseas, we've strengthened NATO. Ukraine is still free. And we pulled ahead of our competition with China, and so much more. I'm so proud of how much we've accomplished together for the American people. And I wish the incoming administration success, because I want America to succeed. That's why I've upheld my duty to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition of power, to ensure we lead by the power of our example. I have no doubt that America is in a position to continue to succeed. That's why my farewell address tonight, I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous concentration, and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before. More than a century ago, but the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts. They didn't punish the wealthy, just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to. Workers want rights to earn their fair share. You know, they were dealt into the deal, and it helped put us on a path to building the largest middle class, the most prosperous century any nation in the world has ever seen. We've got to do that again. In the last 4 years, that's exactly what we've done. People should be able to make as much as they can, but play by the same rules, pay their fair share of taxes. And clear. Just look across the country, from California to North Carolina. That's why I signed the most significant climate and clean energy law ever in the history of the world. And the rest of the world is trying to model it now. It's working, creating jobs and industries of the future. Now, we've proven we don't have to.
You were just listening to President Joe Biden, who is delivering an Oval Office address, a very rare Oval Office address right now here in Washington, D.C. And in the beginning of that address, he reminds us that he will be. He's reminding us of where we stand in history. He was just saying that it's going to take a while for the full impact of his work to be felt by most Americans, really acknowledging, an issue that has played out on the campaign trail. Too many of our fellow Americans said that they weren't feeling the economic relief, that inflation was too high, and that created some very powerful headwinds that made it difficult for Vice President Kamala Harris to become his successor. But he acknowledged that the seeds have been planted. The seeds are there. Very, proudly taking a victory lap on issues that have been a mainstay in his agenda, really reminding us that more people are on health care. They have health care, access to health care than they ever have, reminding us that NATO is stronger than it's ever been, but also warning us that there are dangerous consequences if the wealthy remain unchecked. I suspect that this Oval Office address is really going to highlight what President Biden and his team believe are some of his major accomplishments. Obviously, I think we are our primary audience, but so are the historians, probably the historians a bit more. And so if there are any other highlights from that farewell speech, we'll be sure to bring them to you. But when we come forward, we're going to switch gears a little bit. And we're going to talk with Stephanie Coleman. She's a visionary founder of Neutral Gray LLC and Trey Magazine, which is celebrating 15 years in the news and culture business, standing at the forefront of curating movements before they blossom into trends. We're going to talk to Stephanie about some of the day's news and some of her life's work when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Go be all right.
KBLA Talk 1580 is amplifying Black voices and spotlighting our untold stories. I'm Dominique DePrima. Join me Thursday from 6 to 9 a.m. as we broadcast live from the Altadena, Pasadena area. Due to the National Guard closing down this section, we will not be at Perry's Joint. Our new location is the Pasadena
Hi, Stephanie, are you there?
East Campus at 425 Sierra Madre Villa. We'll be covering the individuals and families impacted by the Altadena Eaton fire. Hear from community leaders and those who have suffered losses that
Hi, Stephanie, are you there?
Forgotten. So join us Thursday.
Hi, Stephanie, can you hear me?
Pasadena Church East Campus at 425 Sierra Madre
I
Villa.
can. You're just on the
Together,
wrong
we can
link,
help them
and so I just
rebuild
put
and
the right
recover.
link in the
Together, we
chat.
are LA strong.
And so just click on the
LA
link in the
united.
chat, and that'll
With
put you in the
your
other room where I'm
friends
at.
KBLA Talk 1580.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now.
800-550-9651.
Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS.
Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start.
Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems.
We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau.
You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com
Or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651.
Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. Only permanent interests as we effort to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and just moments ago, we interrupted the top of our show to bring you just a little taste of President Biden's Oval Office address. It's a rare Oval Office address. It is his farewell address to the nation. At the top of his remarks, reminding us that after 50 years at the center of all of this, he says, I know that believing in the idea of America means respecting the institutions that govern a free society, the presidency, the Congress, the court, free and independent press. And so that's what this transition of power is all about. It's one of the things that makes America different from a lot of other nations. You know, you may not like who you're handing the torch to. You may not share the same party as them. You may not share a lot of the same values that they have, but there are American values that are thought to transcend that. And this president making it very clear, he's leaning into those values that are bigger than any one president, any one political party. But he also did not waste any time sort of reminding us of the accomplishments, the achievements of the administration, but also warning us of the dangers. And one of the things he highlighted at the top of the address was dangerous consequences if the wealthy remain unchecked. I don't think I've ever heard an address from the Oval Office that used the word oligarchy, but that's the word that President Biden used today. And so I'm sure we will be picking apart this farewell address and so much more as the transition of power continues. But we are switching gears now, really welcoming Stephanie Coleman, who is a visionary founder of Neutral Gray LLC, also Trey Magazine. If y'all haven't checked it out, you've got to check it out. They're celebrating 15 years in the news and culture business. If you are a fan of Afrotech, and I've been to Afrotech before, it's a good time. Shout out to Morgan DeBond. Well, Stephanie has a little something to do with that in terms of narrative design. We're going to get into that in a second, but first, welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so very much. I'm so honored to be here on your show. So proud of the work that you're doing. It's not easy keeping the word.
It's not easy, but there's joy in this work. There's joy in this work, being able to curate a show every day that hopefully lifts people up, hopefully informs them, hopefully gives them a giggle or two, right?
Yeah.
Because we can't build a more perfect union, if we don't fill our cup. And I hope that this show fills people's cup. Clearly, your work has been filling people's cup for quite a while. Talk to us about your magazine, Trey Magazine, that's celebrating 15 years in the news and culture business. I mean, there are so many news organizations that are having to, rethink how they do business. So many folks have come and gone. And so for you to have held strong for the past 15 years, please tell us what we don't know.
Well, I think what we know is what you're doing. And I think what I've learned even for myself is that there is a voice that doesn't have a platform. And Trey speaks to that voice. And I think a lot of the news outlets are not growing because they're not being inclusive. And not in a DEI sense, not in a check off this box sense, but really in a listening to the America that we're in, listening to the global hue of the world that we're in, and being in community with that. And I'm really fortunate. I didn't expect to be in the publishing business. I'm a brand communicator, strategist by trade, graphic designer that way. And I looked up and realized, hey, we need to repackage ourselves. I said it in jest, like we need to not let people tell this story this way. And someone said, well, why don't you do something? And here we go. And every month I say, well, that's not really working. And the people say, actually it is. And why don't you tell this story? And then why don't you tell a story of community in that way? And I'm just really honored that they trust Trey with their story.
I mean, that this is giving me goosebumps because your story is very similar to my story. You know, I spent over 15 years working in public affairs and advocacy before returning to my first love of journalism. And I returned to this first love of journalism during the pandemic, where I saw really the, quite frankly, deadly consequences of mis and disinformation, and the importance of having folks as messengers that are not just of the community but in community. And so talk to us about how those components have showed up in the longevity of your work with Trey Magazine.
Yes, and I'm going to be honest, for those entrepreneurs out there, it's not like I haven't tried to quit. It's not that the work doesn't have weight to it. You know, it has its beauty, but it also comes with a commitment of not being the machine, right? Of really being in tune with that and in true to the people, but also being in business. So I think being with that, hearing the stories, I am always taken aback of all the stories we've done and we show people of color in positions of excellence. It doesn't mean that they're celebrity. One of the most popular stories that I ever, most moving, we did a story of a man we call Flower Man in Third Ward, and he was a homeless gentleman. And everyone was so touched because they had lived in community with him but didn't know his name. They had worried when they wouldn't see him walking that something might have happened. And to put a name to him and to really know that they can now speak and say, hey, we know how you got on this path and we're rooting for you, it just really showed the power of journalism and the power of story to create community on all these levels. So I think community reminds us what real journalism is and why storytelling has been a part of our oral history that keeps us strong and also keeps us in community across the planet. So it's a very humbling journey, but it's essential.
You're right. It's a humbling and essential journey indeed. Just hearing you share that made me think about just the tradition of the Black press in particular. It is a tradition that I'm proud to be a part of. A tradition that says that our job as Black journalists in particular in that tradition, I mean, isn't just to be quiet observers. No. Our job is really to be change agents, right? So when we think of the work of so many before us, it's not just about pretty pictures in a magazine. It's not just about, finding a way to beat the algorithm and go viral, right? But it's to offer it's to document Black genius, document Black leadership, to document Black humanity for the ages. And so the weight of that, can at times feel backbreaking.
It can, and just to unpack it, because even to tell that story, I've had to reread what is our history, right? Because if it's written with a bias, the commas and the ands and the ors and the these and what that can really represent. There was one gentleman who walked into the office again with that backbreaking experience, and he was Esther King, a civil rights hero icon in Houston, and we're based in Houston. I don't know, sort of tell you the background with that, but he came in out of the blue, and I didn't know him. I moved back to Houston and said, well, I just came from this speech about what I had done, and he was the villain. And he said, no one even asked me what actually happened. The news was wrong and dishonest, and it painted us this way. And here's a documentary to prove it. And he passed before I got his full story. But just like what you're saying, like at that point, I could not quit because this living legacy was written in this bias space that another generation will have to unpack the truth. Well, I know better, and I can do better for our group so that they can start with truth.
I mean, it's easier said than done. It is not for the faint of heart. Talk to us about trend setting, right? Again, I'm just sort of, taken by the fact that Trey Magazine has been able to sustain itself over the course of 15 plus years.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not an easy balance to, write about and document the stories of folks that are following trends and also setting trends. What advice or what observations would you offer for folks that obsess over trends and what is trending?
I would say be present. You know what I mean? Like, don't be in this trend, because that's someone else's math, right? So I think as an artist, as a creator, you are the trend, and you are a part of the forward thinking of the space that you know and the niche that you know. So I have found that if I'm true to my niche, that I'm at the forefront of that niche. And instead of spending all day chasing someone else's algorithm, create your own and let them become a part of that. Maybe they're not supposed to be one. Maybe your understanding of your trend is just your lane.
Yeah, that could be it. That could be it. Another enterprise that is not just any old trend, but has had some staying power is Afrotech. When we come forward, I want to talk to you about some of the narrative design work that you've been doing with clients like Afrotech. I also want to talk to you about some of the trending headlines in the tech industry. Something tells me that you got a little something to say. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580 in afternoon drive time. More with Stephanie Coleman, the founder of Trey Magazine, when we come forward.
Empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice. You tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know with BIN News. Containment is increasing at the major Los Angeles County fires. The Eaton fire is just over 14,000 acres in size, with the containment now up to 45%. The Palisades fire is holding at under 24,000 acres, with containment inching up to 19%. Wall Street is closing with stocks sharply higher. It comes after a key report shows inflation slowed last month. The Consumer Price Index for December showed core inflation, excluding food and energy, rose by 3.2% against expectations of 3.3%. D.C. is urging property owners to repurpose empty office spaces. Black Mayor Muriel Bowser launched the Office to Anything program, offering a 15-year property tax abatement for converting offices into commercial or residential spaces. And Tiger Woods expressed support for wildfire victims near Los Angeles, thanked first responders, and promised updates on relief efforts. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
North Hollywood, a crash has just been cleared out of lanes on the 170 northbound, coming up at Sherman Way. Off to the right shoulder, but the drive remains really tough. You've got delays now that are backing up, getting away from the 134 101. 101 northbound, that drives a mess out of Hollywood. Delays from Melrose. You remain on the brakes all the way to White Oak and Encino. Southbound 101, that's loading up out of Agora Hills, leaving Liberty Canyon. And the drive remains tough to the 170, 134. Delays in Hollywood from Sunset into downtown Los Angeles. Pasadena 210 eastbound, slowing down at Mountain. That drive is tough all the way to Foothill.
Your local Staples has hot deals and super low prices throughout the store and everything for your business. And right now at Staples, save up to $175 off your print order. Exclusions apply. Visit staples.com/print for details. Ends 2/1. Plus, save even more with the Easy Rewards program at Staples.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would have been 96 today. If he was still with us, he would likely be delighted with the significant progress made by African Americans in sports. When Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, there were no black managers in Major League Baseball. Today, there are 2 right here in LA. Ron Washington with the Angels and Dave Roberts with the Dodgers. There were no black quarterbacks in the NFL in 1968. When the 2024 season kicked off in September, 14 of the NFL's 32 teams started a black quarterback. There were no black head coaches in the NFL in 1968. Since 1989, the NFL has had 20. And there were no black head coaches in Division I college football in 1968 on Monday night in Atlanta, where Dr. King built his civil rights legacy. Notre Dame's Marcus Freeman has a chance to be the first black head coach to win a Division I football national championship. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 stands with you, neighbor to neighbor, bringing you resources and what you need to know. Sign up for Notify LA on your phone to get fire danger alerts and updates, or check on lafd.org. The Watch Duty app is free and provides wildfire maps and updates in real time. Keep your gas tank full and plan your route in case you have to leave the area. City and county officials are urging you to pack a go bag so you can be ready to leave your home quickly in case of an evacuation order. Your go bag should include a couple of days of clothing, copies of your important documents and ID, money, insurance information, your medications, electronic devices, batteries, chargers, a small radio, and emergency contacts. If you receive an evacuation order, gather your loved ones, grab your bag, your pet food, and leave immediately. For information on shelters for your pets or even your family, call 211 for the City of Los Angeles and 311 county-wide. Wearing a mask outside will help protect you from smoke, toxic fume, and particulate matter. If you don't need to go out, it's best to stay home with the windows closed. Getting to know your neighbors is a great way to stay safe, stay connected, and share resources. And Angelinos are stepping up to help. So reach out and find the assistance you need. Mutual Aid LA Network is constantly updating a Google Sheet with mutual aid resources. You can find it at tiny.cc-malan-fire. The earlier you make a plan, the better off you'll be when every second counts. Praying for LA, preparing, and standing with you. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hit me!
National news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and delighted to be in conversation this hour with Stephanie Coleman. She's the founder of Neutral Gray, LLC. She's also the founder of Trey Magazine, which has been around for over 15 years, really holding it down in the news and culture space. Let me tell you something. CNN Plus couldn't last 15 years. Right. There are a lot of outlets out there that I'm sure had a whole lot more resources, right, that have been able to last for a shorter period of time than these 15 years. And so, in my view, I think a lot of the big dogs are getting a lay of the land and taking a look at these independent media outlets and trying to learn, like, okay, what are y'all doing? That we're trying to do with a whole lot more resources. And so, in that spirit, welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It is humbling, like you said earlier, and I just, sometimes you have a formula, and sometimes the people just speak for what they want. And I think if the bigger machines would embrace that there is more to grassroots than this sort of belittling notion, that being connected to your actual readers and sources is essential. They are your consumers, they are your buyers, but they're also your biggest advocates.
That's right. Now, we have been covering the LA wildfires every day on this show, a number of shows on KBLA Talk 1580. Our home station is in Los Angeles, safe from the wildfires, but so many of our leaders, learners, and listeners have been impacted.
Yeah.
And so I understand you have some Cali roots, and in that spirit, I've got to ask you, what's your take on sort of the relief and, quite frankly, still the emergency response to the wildfires?
Yeah, it's sobering to just sort of see humanity have to be challenged in that way. Coming from the South, my family on my dad's side are from Arkansas, and California was a space of freedom and imagination, and sort of beyond the borders of complexion and nationality, and you weren't working the farm all day, and a place to reinvent. So it is generationally complicated to see community and family have to navigate what is still there's no closure to this process at this point, and there won't be for a while. So I am a little sorry, Mike. I am concerned. I am worried. I'm hoping that us as media can continue to not only spread the word but give hope. I've tried to reach out in ways to just say, like, we see you. We're here, just as when Houston had our floods and people came through, and just to know that you're visible, and it feels isolating and alone, but there are homes across this country that are open for when someone needs to relocate, and that we as media can help share that. I don't believe in all systems as perfect. So there are entities that are supposed to help, but is this within or beyond their capacity? And we as citizens need to step in for each other.
Yeah,
I think that's, yeah.
I think you're right. And I think also sort of documenting what's happening is going to be critically important. I think that's the role that we have stepped into in our work, is to try and amplify as many voices, as many experts to understand sort of the past, the present, and what we should look for well into the future. But speaking of the future, let's talk about the future of Afrotech.
Yes.
I've been to the Afrotech conference. I'm sure a number of our leaders, learners, and listeners, if they haven't been to Afrotech, they certainly have heard about it. One of the things that you've said is, hey, how can we make Afrotech a year-long celebration? Give us some hints.
Well, I think, it's interesting coming out of California with author and sort of a birthplace of Afrofuturism with Octavia Butler, that there is this sort of notion of what we come out of a fire with is this notion of future self. And as people, and I don't just limit it to people of color, but just people in general who had to create our own narrative, that Afrotech offers a tangible proof that there's an opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves, not just out of a past story that we were forced to come out of, but out of one in which we can create and imagine. So I'm really excited that Afrotech is in Houston and was in Houston for 2024 and will be back in 2025. And I feel, my commitment, our responsibility is to really help amplify those programs. I mean, we are based in Houston with that, and those innovations that seemed impossible, right? That seemed that not only was there no place or space for us, but now we can actually be in the building and the creating of those spaces. I hear so much about AI, and that it is pulling from narratives about us that should not be, but we're early enough. Right? Like, we're early enough that we can build something, looking at fan base that was sitting there, right, as a concept, and he was pushing it. And then this void in the marketplace has amplified. But what he had to do is have a future vision that we will have a platform. And when the moment is right, the people will be able to come to that. So with Afrotech, I think there is something extraordinary that we as Houstonians can bring to that we as journalists can help bridge that gap from imagination to tangible, from buying and consuming it to being a part of the building of these tools. I think that's really important. There is a group led by Donna Jackson coming out of Detroit, The Color of Sci-Fi, what does that look like for us to be, creating our own image in that space? So there are some brilliant ways in which art and culture and technology and employment, and Houston as a diverse city, the fastest growing, youngest, 90 languages coming out. Like, how do we emerge as a space that sets an example for the future of tech? Not just from our lens, but how do we engage with the world? Can we create, if we cannot create a perfect union in real life, can we create it in the metaverse? Can we use the metaverse as a space to create the perfect scenario of our global truth and then live that back out, right? Like that could be the place where we imagine what it would be like without being reactionary.
And speaking of imagination, one of the things that you've said in terms of, your philosophy, you've said that branding is the easy part, in your focus on disruptive design solutions that communicate narratives that transcend space and time, i.e. Afrofuturism. Talk to us about, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think sometimes when you talked earlier about trends, right, there is that sort of chasing notion. So you're a part of something that's discarded. You're a part of something that's discarded. But when you really create the narrative, as you're creating on your show, and as you're creating and Trey is hoping to create in our story, when you look back, when another generation looks back, it is still a viable and a livable truth. When I look back at the early editions of Jet magazine, when I look back at the early editions of Ebony and Essence, they are still viable and they hold a truth, right? They're this sort of like capsule of time in which people still have issues. We're talking 30 years, they're still sitting in a special case in their home. That I really believe that it is our journey to tell a story that is so powerful that people can't let it go, that the oral history of the notion that there was a story is so powerful that it's undeniable. And many of the things that have come out, be it what we've learned about the Black female soldiers and what we've learned about so many things that are part of our NASA. I grew up in Houston, and I just used to say, like, no Black people? Like, there was never, no, on any field trip, like they didn't laundry, like we didn't do anything. And had it not been for the oral stories, had it not been for this notion of journalism, had it not been for the scraps of paper that people kept, the tangible hard truths, that would have been eradicated. But now it's a new minimum for a 8-year-old to know, oh no, we were a part of these things. So that's my new minimum. Not that I'm the first, but I come from a lineage of. So I can only do that and more. And that to me is that imagination, and that part of Afrofuturism is once you know that you come from something excellent, you have no choice but to live up to that DNA. You know what I mean? You don't have to exceed it, but you have to at least know, well, I mean, but that is who I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And how, and even if I decide to be, as Martin Luther King says, like, a street sweeper, I come from the best of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can be the best of them in whatever I choose to find joy with. And that is our story. That is our story skill as reporters in journalism, to say that even that job, regardless of what the income is essential to us as community, as community of any race and of any language needs that.
That's right. I mean, just even as you shared that so beautifully, I was thinking about that scene from Black Panther. I talk about it often, on air and off, when T'Challa is getting his butt whooped, and the Queen Mother does what? She yells out, "Remember who you are."
Right.
Remember who you are. And hat tip to you, because so much of the work that you do, whether we're talking about Trey Magazine or some of the work through Neutral Gray LLC with clients like Afrotech, you are helping us to see something that may not be right in front of us, but that still may be possible.
Yeah.
And you help us to see it, while in the process helping us to see something in ourselves that's always been there.
Yeah.
That excellence, that genius,
yeah.
that leadership, it's been there.
Yeah.
It's in our DNA. And
Yeah.
so if nobody's said this to you lately, I want to say thank you for the body of work that you have built and are still building.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be on your show, and I hope we can, sort of share energies in the future and see how we can, iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, the quiet part out loud when we come forward. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for being here.
Be well.
On KBLA Talk 1580, we've got a lot to talk about.
When we moved to the States, I kind of had no cultural identity. Smoking was sort of synonymous with being cool. That is just not a life I want to show my daughter. I don't want her to be controlled the way that I was, but she's not interested. She doesn't associate smoking with being cool.
Californians are beating big tobacco. You can too. For free support, text Kick Nicotine to 66819 today.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project. Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do you do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail. Because freedom should be free. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and you, working to build a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and it is about that time. What time is it? It's time for the quiet part out loud. Now, we were just having a great conversation with Stephanie Coleman of Trey Magazine, also the founder of Neutral Gray LLC. And we were talking about Afrofuturism. We were talking about Black excellence and Black genius and Black leadership, all the things that we can clearly see online and offline. But I want to talk a little bit about the future of it online. You see, from TikTok to RedNote, one of the big questions out there right now today is, where will Black content creators and users find their next digital home? You see, the Griot is reporting that since the pandemic, TikTok has grown into one of the most influential social media platforms in the United States. From lighthearted comedy to education content, the app has opened doors for creators and users across the country, especially Black creators like Reese Tisa and Kabi Lame and Tabitha Brown and Keith Lee, who all broke out on the platform. Did you know Tabitha Brown broke out on the platform? I didn't know that. And, now Tabitha Brown is in the target. I mean, my goodness. But it's also important to note that in April 2024, the U.S. Senate passed a bill pressuring TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to sell the platform or face a ban in the United States. And so with the case now before the Supreme Court, TikTok creators and users find themselves in limbo as they await a final decision on the app's fate set for January 19th. Now, in an attempt to protect this thriving digital economy, Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey introduced the Extend the TikTok Deadline Act earlier this week, yet the possibility of losing TikTok has already prompted users to consider their next steps if the app disappears. I think one of the things that people forget when it comes to these social media apps is that a lot of these content creators, they ain't just sitting there posting videos, posting pictures, right? But they're running businesses. They're paying extra close attention to all the data analytics attached to every single one of those posts. They want to know what level of engagement they get when they do this or that. They want to know what kind of reach do they get when they do this or that. They want to know, how many more followers that they get. Everybody's trying to crack the code as to how they can go viral. And once they figure out how to do that, how can they keep their viral streak going? Because there are dollars attached to that. And so while one might expect TikTok users base to migrate to established platforms like Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook, the choice isn't that simple. You see, TikTok's unique algorithm has cultivated a sense of digital community that its competitors have struggled to replicate. And so for many, the platform feels like an oasis of creativity, relatability, and support. Sure, social media is never entirely free of trolls, but TikTok feels a little bit different, like a space where people are more open-minded and genuinely uplifting. And so beyond its community vibe, as they say, TikTok also functions as a versatile tool, doubling as a search engine. Did you know that? So it's not just people posting here and there, it's also a search engine. Users can find everything from restaurant recommendations to food recipes with video content that provides a level of authenticity and visual details that traditional text reviews often lack. I know my mother-in-law is a TikTok fan. If it's the early morning hours, chances are she might be scrolling through TikTok. I can't tell you how many conversations we've had recently, especially over the holidays, where, she's mentioned, I saw this on TikTok, or I heard about this on TikTok. And so, TikTok is not just big business, but it's also become a part of social media culture. And it's hard to put something like that back in the bottle. I don't think a lot of these lawmakers anticipated how disruptive it would be to just turn the lights off on TikTok. Now, my suspicion is that lawmakers aren't going to let that happen. That's my suspicion. But I could be wrong. But I have a feeling I'm going to be right. That they're going to figure out some way to reset the clock at the very least. It's probably too late for there to be, a buyer, but we'll see what happens. But just know, to all you TikTok users out there, all the TikTok content creators, we're thinking about you. And we know that for you, it's about more than just posting on a social media platform, but you all are businesses, your small businesses, some micro businesses, some major business enterprises. And if this thing goes sideways, it may very well disrupt your business, and we don't want to see that happen. And so we'll keep you posted as things develop and as solutions surface, if in fact they do, as this transition of power continues right here in Washington, D.C. We're going to have to leave it here. My thanks to the entire village that helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tabitha Smiley, our sound engineer, Andy. Hey, Andy. Our team of producers, Faraji and Kim, and each and every one of you, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners. We do this for you each and every day because we believe that documenting Black genius, Black excellence, Black leadership, and those that are in community with Black people, folks of conscience everywhere that are about the business of building a more perfect union, we believe in that work. And that's what this show is all about. Remember, do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and you have been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.